Well, what is going on, everybody? I am headed back from Oklahoma today, and I know I'm driving, but I'm going to keep my eyes ahead. But I really wanted to talk in this video about a full moon. And the full moon is something that you hear about a lot when it comes to bass fishing. There are some myths, there are some things that just aren't true, but there are some things that truly the full moon does in the fishing world that can make a huge difference in your fishing day. And we just experienced a full moon. We're kind of in the middle of one over the last couple of days, and man, I tell you what, I saw some things that I have not seen before, and I want to share them with you guys. Now, before we get into it, this video is brought to you by my apparel company, Fin Fishing. And right now over at Fin Fishing, I'm doing a little bit of a BOGO sale for the month of March. So if you buy one of my USA made sun shirts, or you buy one of the duck shorts, the new duck shorts, you're actually going to get a free bottle of Buzzer Rock's Blood Stop formula. Now, I don't have it with me, and like I said, I'm driving, but it is a really cool product that will actually help prevent a fish from bleeding, or at least help stop the bleeding. So guys, not only do I have those products, I also have the new duck hat. This is a waterproof hat, which really came in handy today, actually, because got a little thunderstorm. But anyways, I'm gonna leave some links down below in the description. Shopping at Fin Fishing is truly the best way to help support this channel. I greatly appreciate all of you who have done so. So like I said, I want to talk a little bit about the moon today. And I'll never forget the first time I really started hearing people talk about the moon was actually my uncle down in Florida. And he told me to always pay attention to full moons and new moons, especially during the spawn, especially when bass are pushing up shallow. And I never fully experienced it until a few years later. I had the privilege of spending 5 weeks down in Florida a number of years ago. And through those 5 weeks, I actually got to see 2 full moon kind of come through the area. And this 1 week, I pretty much fished the same body of water like 4 days in a row. It's a clear body of water down in Florida, which there are not a ton of clear bodies of water. A lot of them have that really tannic, dark colored water. And when I got down there, I was catching some fish here and there, shallow. I was primarily shallow water fishing, but I ended up catching most of my fish over the first day or two, kind of off the edges of a lot of these grass flat areas with like a jerk bait, just casting to grass lines, fishing that jerk bait out. And it seemed like a lot of fish were staging there. And I actually got on a decent bite doing that. And then over the course of the next couple of days, it just seemed like that bite was truly dying. And I didn't realize it until one day I was at my uncle's house. I had been staying there, and he's like, "How have the fish changed with the full moon?" And I wasn't even paying attention to it. And I'm like, I wonder if that is why my jerkbait bite is dying. And so I ended up going up shallow on this lake the very next day, and I have never seen that many bass pull up on beds that quick in my life. Never before. In the couple of days leading up to it, you know, when I was on that jerkbait bite, I had checked up shallow often, and I had kept going up, and I wouldn't see anything on a bed. I found lots of beds, but there was never any bass on them. And I'm telling you, over the course of a couple of days, all these fish flooded the bank during the full moon. And so whether you can visibly see the fish or not, if that ever happens to you, if you are in kind of a pre-spawn spawn kind of water temperature between about 58 to 65, if your bite drastically changes and you have a full moon, a lot of times what happens is that those bass start to lock onto beds. And when they lock onto beds, the number one thing that you can do is fish very, very slow. Fish really slow with a lot of soft plastic baits, whether that's a wacky rig style bait, whether that's a Texas rig style bait. And the other thing is I really want you guys to understand how fast that this can happen, because I've just spent the last week in Oklahoma, And the first couple of days I fished down here in Oklahoma, the water temps were a lot in the 49 to 53 degree like water temperature. A lot of fish out, a lot of fish pre-spawn. And we had a really warm week. In the end of this warm week that we just experienced was capped with a full moon. And yesterday I got to fish with one of my favorite fishermen of all time, like probably one of my childhood heroes as a fisherman, which is Edwin Evers. And we got to this lake we'd never been to before, and he started out, the water temp was like 54, 55, and we started out from the bank, and he had caught a couple, and he decided to transition up really shallow, and actually so shallow that I was thinking like, man, I don't know about this, but we jumped over this really large flat that was probably about 1.5 feet deep. Like we could barely get through it, and it was about 150 yard long flat. And when we got over the flat, it dropped off into about 3 to 4 foot of water, and we started seeing a lot of things that basically looked like beds. It looked like there was beds in this area, and literally Edwin's like, what? He was like, what spawns before a bass? And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, you know, crappie and bluegill, catfish, they all spawn after a bass does. And I'm like, I have no clue, but these definitely look like beds. And lo and behold, we started seeing bass, not on beds, but they were around those beds everywhere. And as a matter of fact, the fish over the course of probably a day had started to fan off a ton of nests. There was beds all over the place, but they were vacant of bass. And this is where the interesting thing happened here, is that when we moved into this area, it was probably about 10 o'clock in the day. So the sun was starting to get up, and we found that the water temperature was really warm. It was like 60, 61 when we got kind of far back into this little shallow water area that we were in. And it was really clear, so we could see really well. And we started seeing bass everywhere. I'm talking hundreds of bass between probably 1 pound and 4 and 5 pounds. Everywhere, all over the place. And we spent a couple of hours in this shallow water area, and Edwin figured out a couple of ways to catch some of those fish, although they were being very stingy. A lot of them were up high in the water column and sunning themselves. But the cool thing is that on our way out of that area, so just a few hours later, it was probably like 12:30, 1 o'clock, we were kind of making our way out. A lot of those same beds that we saw on the way in that were vacant of bass, we started seeing bass sit right in the middle of them. They had literally, over the course of a couple of hours, changed from, you know, probably fanning some of those beds overnight to starting to set up on the beds. And it was absolutely insane to both of us. Like, I have never in my life seen fish literally transition as the day goes on and progress. And again, that was really in my mind, and I asked Edwin about this, and he's one of the best bass fishermen ever. I was like, do you think that full moon really pushed these fish kind of into this phase? And he was like, absolutely, 100%. And so it was just really cool to see. And the one thing that I wanted to leave you guys off before I get done, not only does this impact bed fishing in the springtime, but throughout the course of the year, a lot of times, for example, in May, if you have threadfin shad and gizzard shad in your lakes, one of the best times to look for a good shad spawn bite is around a full moon. It's always around a full moon. And also throughout the summer, literally every month through the summer, I mean, June, July, August, again, around full moons, if you look up shallow, you're not going to see bass beds, you're going to see bluegill beds. And finding bluegill beds a lot of times can lead you to catching some of the biggest bass that live in a lot of these lakes. And it can be an unreal bite, but again, it revolves around the moon. Now, with all of that being said, I'm not saying you can't catch a bass on a bed or that hasn't pushed up shallow when you're in between moon phases. It's not all about the moon. Bass will spawn when the time sets up for them. But if your water temp and weather really correlates with the moon, it just seems like there is a mega push up shallow. And it's something that I've experienced several times. It's something that I still experience and literally just saw the transition happen yesterday, which was really, really cool. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you realize just how important the moon is, because it can be a big deal. So always pay attention to when it's a full moon. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Check out that fin fishing gear, and I'll see you guys in the next one.